Welcome to Mystery of the Soul. I'm your co-host, Erin, and I'm joined by my friend Leo, a psychic medium and Reiki master. Our podcast explores the depth of the soul, the spiritual, and the supernatural.
Hey, Erin.
Hi, Leo. How are you?
I'm good. How about you doing?
Good. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Here we are, 2024, with our first episode of the new year.
I know. It's exciting. How are your holidays?
They were pretty good.
Yeah.
Uneventful, but, quieter, which was good.
Yep. I like it. Mine too. Very low key.
Good.
A lot of time with the horses, which was wonderful. I love that.
Now, I know you visited the horses today. How were they today?
They're amazing. They're so good. I have two horses for our listeners. An older guy, T-Man, who's coming up on 17, and then a young guy, Clifford, who's coming up on 6. And they're great. They're hilarious. They're just like, they're made like when I drive into the barn, they know my truck, right? And I roll down the window and they run to greet me at the gate. It's the best feeling in the world. Yeah,
nice.
It's pretty awesome.
They're like, Mom's here.
Yep, Mom's here. Yep, she's either bringing us into work or feed us, but we'll run to the gate either way. Yeah, but it's cold outside for our listeners in the Northeast. I think you guys know what we're talking about, but it is freezing cold. Like today's max temp was 30, I think.
I know we have some snow coming in like late tonight going into tomorrow. Yeah. I assume you have the same.
Yeah. Yep. Yes, I do. So I'm really excited about what we're going to talk about today because this is a topic that you had proposed that's near and dear to your heart, but it's near and dear to mine too. And I think it's a really good one for the new year, right? To help people. Mm-hmm. So what we're going to talk about today is this idea, like the mystery of preserving the soul, right? Mystery of preserving the soul. So, Leo, I'm just going to launch it over to you. Like, warm us up. What does that mean? What does it mean to preserve the soul? What do you know about it? What do you think would be helpful to talk about?
Okay. So, when I first started to try to figure out what I wanted the episode to be about, I was going to try to compare a couple different things, and it didn't seem to be coming quite together the way I wanted it to. And so like before we started getting on recording, I was explaining, actually literally last night, I started reconnecting and checking in with my guides and connecting with your celestial smoky quartz that you gave me. Which was great. Yeah. So what I was getting from connecting with the guides and just kind of sitting with it is this idea of the mystery of our soul's preservation. And our soul, basically, we've talked about it, was incarnated here into our human form in this lifetime. And whether from you consider the universe, source, the collective, it's kind of created this human physical form that is the container vessel for our soul here on Earth.
Interesting. Wow.
So, and our soul, when it comes down, it comes into this lifetime on Earth to experience different lessons. And these lessons, either however long the lifetime is here, it could be minutes, it could be hours, could be weeks, months, years, or even many lifetimes for either a younger or an older soul. And one of the big messages that I got from the guides, which was kind of new when I was kind of exploring this topic, was that our human form would not be able to contain our soul's life force without the extension of a combination of our physical, biological, and energetic systems, which all together created an environment in order for the soul to experience life here on Earth.
I mean, it's pretty powerful what you just said.
Yeah.
Sorry, it just really resonated.
Yeah. And these systems, I kind of like had a metaphor associated with, these being like spacesuits that, humans, when they go into outer space, they wear these in order to kind of sustain their lives while they're outside the Earth's atmosphere in space. And if you think about it, like our soul, when it comes here to incarnate, it's kind of out of its collective atmosphere. Make
Yeah,
sense?
it does. I think the spacesuit analogy is really helpful too.
Yeah.
Like we need that. Um,
Hmm.
it's why taking care of our health is so important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, as our body, our human form is being developed from inception, how it happens is still, even though we have all the science and technology, it is still like a mystery, and it's very complex. Like our
Mhm.
bodies somehow create these different systems that make up our human form, whether it's like a combination of the skeletal, the muscular, organ, nervous, endocrine, tissue, fluid, and our immune systems, and many others that I might have forgotten. But it's not a biology lesson tonight. So, but all this created and manifested into our human body is really kind of a miracle. And science and technology has given us the resources and tools to understand how these systems work and function as a whole together. So
Yes.
the physical part is easier to sort of measure, and it's more tangible
Hmm.
than the energetic systems.
Yes.
But the energetic system plays just as important part with the preservation of our soul here. And so there's various different energy systems that have been discovered over thousands of years. And we're going to talk about them tonight. And the ones that I am going to talk about tonight are the Dantian, the conception governing vessels, the meridians, the chakras, and our auric field. And they all help to regulate our soul's life force while contained in our human form.
That's a lot. That's a lot. Um, I really, sorry I interrupted you earlier. I just feel like that spacesuit analogy is such a helpful way. Like, here we come, our soul pops into Earth, but we need something to help protect us, right? To help us
Right.
move through this meat suit we call a human body.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of like preserving the soul comes down to that kind of spacesuit energetic protection, right?
Mm-hmm.
That we need to get through this human experience.
Right.
And I think society, what's interesting is that society has gotten, and as we progress more, you'll see this more come up, has gotten more understanding, I think, about caring for your whole self and all elements of yourself as a person.
Body, mind, and soul.
Yeah. And so, like, yes, we do know a lot about the physical, like you said, and that's where we started. But I definitely see a lot of positive momentum toward an appreciation for things outside of just physical well being, which is pretty cool.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about you started us down this path. Let's talk about these energy systems. Like let's get
Mhm.
granular. What are they? What do we know about them? Why should we know about them?
So each of these systems have been discovered over thousands of years in different regions, different cultures, etc., through experimentation, trial and error, discovery, however it happened.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the first one that I want to talk about is the Dantian, and this comes from traditional Chinese medicine. And there are three Dantian, and they're referred to as the three treasures. There's the lower, which is the Jing energy, the middle, which is the seed of Qi energy, and the upper, which is Shen energy. And I'll talk about those three individually in a second. But the history of the Dantian dates back thousands of years and is part of the body of alternative therapies that you see referenced in Reiki, Qigong, and Tai Chi. And they're often used in conjunction with traditional Chinese medicine, as I referenced earlier. And these are thought to be subtle energies that support and sustain the blood, bodily fluids, and solid tissues. And you can think of the Dantians as reservoirs or fields of energies.
Okay, so we've got the lower Dantian, the middle Dantian, and the upper Dantian, just to keep it
Right.
simple, right? Okay,
Yep.
super. Keep going. I'm with you.
Yep. So the Jing, spelled Jing, I may be butchering the pronunciation. That's okay.
Go ahead.
In this lower Dantian, in this Jing energy, it's connected to our sacral and root chakras, and it's believed to be a person's essence. So it's said to be related to the wisdom of our genetic code, reproduction, and the gifts passed down to us from our parents.
Hmm. Okay, so
Now,
Jing is the lower one. That's why it's
right,
associated to like the sacral root chakra. Okay,
correct. Yeah.
got it.
Now, the middle or key is related to the heart chakra. Now, this is more subtle, less dense of an energy than the Jing. And as you elevate through the Dantians from the lower to the middle to the upper, you also evolve through the purity of the consciousness and subtlety of energy, just like you would in looking at the chakras from like the root to the crown.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I'm with you. So it's just moving up.
Moving up.
Got it.
And the Shen, this is the upper Dantian, which is connected to the third eye chakra. And this is connected to spirit and intelligent consciousness and is the result of cultivating your Jing essence, which is referred to as that lower Dantian,
Mm-hmm.
upward through the heart key, and then up finally to the upper, the Shen.
Got it. Okay. So this is all ancient Chinese, right? That's where this is coming from.
Traditional Chinese medicine. And
Traditional
these
Chinese. Okay.
Dantians are these reservoirs of energy that, starting with the lower one, a lot more dense, and working upward to the middle and the upper Dantian
Mm-hmm.
to more subtle and light and higher consciousness, higher vibration.
Got it. Okay. Interesting. I think what's fascinating is that you have, over the course of history, a number of different societies that have all defined energy in one way or another, but there is this common thread of them each identifying energetic capacity in our human body, which is really interesting, right?
Yeah. And, you know, a lot of these energy systems that we're talking about tonight, there's more that goes into them, and they're pretty complex, but we're just kind of just scratching the surface with these. And, you know, we're going to include links to resources that I used to support the information we're talking about tonight.
Mm-hmm.
So if people want to learn more about these systems, they can go learn a little bit more themselves and dive a little bit deeper with it.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, keep us going. So keep going. So now we know we have the three.
So the next is the conception governing vessels, which are these extraordinary meridians. And people have heard of meridians and their channels for energy flow, but these conception and governing vessels. These are like major meridians, channels. And so the governing vessel runs up the back of the body from the perineum to the crown of the head, while the conception vessel runs down from the front of the body, from the crown to the perineum. And the perineum that I'm referring to is the anatomical point between the sex glands and the anal sphincter. Thus, together, these two meridians encircle the body on its vertical axis. Both run very close to the surface of the body. And the path these meridians also coincides with the network of the central nervous system, and stimulating the central nervous system will fill the vessels, and by extension of all the meridians the vessels supply. And along these vessels, there are certain specific points where ki or energy, as well as blood, other body fluids, and emotions tend to get blocked. So these points are known as gates.
Ah, okay. So gate is a spot where it's very likely to get a block, either physical or energetically.
Yeah, I think so. There's
Okay.
different ways to look at it. Um, what I'm getting is we're going to talk about meridians next, but it's kind of like, I don't know, the words I'm getting is like mother father of
Ah,
the meridians, and maybe yin yang of the meridians.
that's very cool. Okay, keep going. You're on a roll.
Okay, so the meridians, there are 12 major meridians that run on each side of the body, one side mirroring the other, and each meridian corresponds to an internal organ, and each organ with its own physiological and invisible energy functions. It's not only dependent on the other organ systems, but also on the greater meridian network. So according to traditional Chinese medicine, as long as qi flows, qi being the energy, flows freely through your meridians and your organs work in harmony, your body can remain healthy. So this means when your body's meridian system functions well, you are well. So yet due to a number of causes like excess stress, which we all know about, your body's meridians can become clogged or even blocked. And this affects the function of the corresponding organ and ultimately the whole body, mind, and spirit.
Yep, got it. Okay, so those meridians make sense. I think you're going to walk us through the chakras next, right?
Yes.
Okay. So when you and I did our little pre-chat, like the chakra associations are much more familiar to me. I don't know why. I've just read about them, heard about
Right.
them, connect with them more easily.
Mhm. I think
But
it's just because Western medicine and our Western culture is more comfortable, more familiar with the chakra system, and I think is more accepting of it, I feel, because I feel like there's been certain little bit more maybe evidence and maybe studies that have been done to, I think, give us a little bit more evidence and just more awareness of these.
Mhm.
And so there's a lot of different chakras, but there's a major seven that we're very familiar with, being the root, the sacral, the solar plexus, the heart, the throat, the third eye, and the crown. And the chakra literally means spinning wheel. So the chakras are thought to be spinning discs of energy that should stay open and aligned for optimal emotional and physical well-being. If energy becomes blocked in one of the chakras, it triggers physical, mental, and emotional imbalance. So, for example, you may feel symptoms such as anxiety, lethargy, or poor digestion, and a well tuned asana practice or yoga practice can free up energy and stimulate an imbalanced chakra, paving the way for that wonderful internal shift for which yoga is known. And with just a little bit of coaching, we can tap into the chakras as a potent way of harnessing and shifting your energy in the direction you want it to go. Um, where later we have the auric system after this that we're going to talk about, but after this, we're going to later talk about different ways to kind of also kind of manage, cultivate, encourage our energy system's health.
Mhm.
And so we'll get into a little bit more beyond yoga and some other modalities that will help with that.
Yeah, it's funny you brought yoga up because I was also thinking in when I practice yoga, and I'm a beginning early phase yogi, but they talk about the chakra system all of the time. And my guides have told me through another PM like you, Leo, they were like, oh, yeah, you should they want you in yoga more often. And as you were
Mm-hmm.
talking about why yoga has this impact on our body physically, but also energetically, I was like, oh, that's why they don't want me to come to yoga. Like, it makes so much sense, though. And yoga is a really, really beautiful practice. So it makes a ton of sense. Okay, auras. I'm really interested in this. Will you talk more about auras?
Okay, so the aura. So before the nuclear age, the common perception was that everything was made up of matter. And then scientists split the atom and discovered that this isn't the case, for truly everything in the universe is made up of energy vibrating at different frequencies. So, similarly, even things that appear solid are oscillating at a molecular level. This
Mm.
includes you or us. So, an aura or an auric field emanates from this energy that surrounds you and us. This is your life force, known as also prana in Indian cultures and ki or chi in Eastern philosophies. And then essentially, the fact that you're alive and not a corpse is the vital force circuiting our body. Now, there's 7 layers to the auric system, and there's a few different names that can be synonymous with each other, but the first layer, which is like the layer that's closest to our body, and also these auric fields are connected as well to the chakras, but
Mm-hmm.
the physical body or etheric layer, this is the corporeal matter of beings, and so this is like the first layer beyond our physical body.
Mm-hmm.
And then a second layer is our emotional body layer. And this reflects depending on where our emotions are at.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's colors associated with the chakras that coincide with the colors with the layers of the aura.
Mm-hmm.
However, what I was reading with the emotional body layer, that can change with many of the different colors of the rainbow, depending on like our mood and emotions that are going on.
Oh.
And then the third layer, our mental body, these are concepts in a rational world. And so the mental body, I feel like what I'm getting about that is, I think a little bit what maybe manifests from the previous emotional body,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
what is maybe reality.
Mm-hmm.
The fourth layer, the astral body, this is where our auras merge and interact with other living beings, so including like animals and plants. And then there's the fifth layer, which is called or referred to as the etheric template or spiritual body, and this is associated with divine will.
Mm-hmm.
The sixth layer, which is also the celestial body and also referred to as the angelic body, this is where we experience and connect with the spirit world.
Mm-hmm.
So, as for example, as I'm raising my vibration, it's that celestial body layer that's blending with the spiritual realm.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
It does.
And then go ahead. What?
I was going to ask about colors, but go ahead. I think you have one more, and then we'll come back to colors.
Okay. So the seventh layer referred to either the causal or catheric body, or referred to the true self. It links us to the superconscious, God, or higher truth. And I think this kind of reflects like how connected we are to, I think, to the divine.
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense.
Got it. Okay.
So the colors, to go back to talk about colors and to talk about the chakras and the aura, red is the color that's associated with the root. Orange is associated with the sacral. Yellow's connected to the solar plexus. Green or pink is associated with the heart. The throat is blue. The third eye is indigo. And the crown is either violet or white.
Got it.
And some of the seventh layer and the sixth layer, I think even in addition to white, it could look like almost even like a golden
Yeah.
hue to it as well.
Yeah, I've heard like a gold shimmery association. I've heard that as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So as you're sort of plugging into each one of these bodies, so to say, your aura might be reflecting that corresponding color a little bit. Is that possible?
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And the colors of the aura, they'll change, right? Based on your mood or where you're vibing and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Based on our mood, our vibration, our environment. Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm sure grief would definitely impact what an aura looks like too, right?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. So this is like a really good grounding, I think. So we talked about traditional Chinese medicine.
Hmm.
We talked about the key, right? The lower, middle, upper. We talked a lot about the meridians, and then we kind of cruised through the chakras. So we've got like a really good foundation for sort of the
Hmm.
historical reference and the scientific reference to all of these energy fields. I think now it's probably good for us to talk about like what people can actually do to preserve
Hmm.
their own energy and like their own soul, right?
Yep.
Okay.
So the common things that probably everybody knows, but whether we practice this or not is another thing, depending on what's going on in our life. But
Mm-hmm.
we all know how important sleep is. And so our sleep hygiene affects everything. When we're sleeping, that's when our physical body and our astral body are kind of active and at work in recovering.
Yeah, because like our soul doesn't need to sleep, just our body, right?
Right, right. Because I think our sleep, helps us recalibrate.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then the other things that, you know, people are aware of, but it's difficult with fast food and all that stuff. But what we put into our body, our diet, and also our water intake as well. So that definitely affects how our physical body functions. But
Yeah.
also in reading and doing some of the research with water being a conductor of energy can also affect our energy body as well, of maybe, let's say, how well hydrated we are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then also just for the strength of our physical body, physical exercise is important. And we either are sedentary or we're more active, and you know every person's different on either what they're motivated to do or not motivated to do, or what they're capable of doing or what they're not able to do. And if there's physical limitations, there may be limitations on what they can actually do.
Yeah. Yep. You know what's interesting about exercise as it correlates to energy is that whenever I'm feeling stressed or anxious or have any sort of feeling that is just more than I want to be carrying, right? Do you know kind of like that ping pong feel where like you're like electrified, but it doesn't feel good. It's not something you want. Going for
Right.
a walk like
Hmm.
physically helps me let that energy out. And whatever length of time I need, sometimes it's a busy day, I can only do 20 minutes. Sometimes I can get an hour in. But well, that's certainly good for my physical body, right? It gets my blood moving, it's oxygen in. Energetically, I feel a lot better too. I've burned off some of that excess buzz that I didn't need.
Right.
So I totally get how that's valuable.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay. What else?
So mentally and emotionally, meditation is a really good practice. And so that helps us, especially with like the upper chakras.
Mm.
And also meditation can help us physiologically as well, because there's many studies out there on meditation that it helps reduce stress and actually has effects on our physiology.
Yeah. One thing I hear a lot about meditation is that people like don't know how to do it. They like sit down for 5 minutes or 2 minutes and then they're already annoyed because their brain is like buzzing with a million other things to do. What I would say to that, and this isn't sponsored or anything, but the Calm app has guided meditations that are like really short, like 5, 6, 7 minutes. And you can sit still for five,
Yeah.
6, 7 minutes. You don't have to do it. Like they'll walk you through it. You can just listen to them talk and then check the box, but keep it up over time. It'll get better.
Yeah.
That's
Calm
been
is
my
one of those
experience.
phone apps. Insight Timer, Aura is another. Um, you can also find stuff on YouTube, and you can also go in person and find like a class. Like there's many places that, do group meditations.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I want to talk about just real briefly about meditation is a lot of people struggle with it because they feel like they just can't do it because they have such a busy mind and they have too
Mm-hmm.
much going on. And that's actually more of a reason to meditate. And the thing that holds people back is people get frustrated because they have all these random interrupting thoughts that pop into their head when they make an attempt to meditate. And it just, a lot of people just derails them because they're like, oh my God, I just can't focus. I can't get in the moment. And what I coach people with that is to think of meditation as almost like a mental exercise. And so the exercise of meditation is that assume that these interrupting thoughts are going to come through. And so it's not wrong and you're not doing something incorrectly. Um, Other people worry about like being fidgety or not being able to sit still. Yes, people show people like sitting very still while they're meditating, but you don't have to be still to meditate. Um, and to go back to the exercise of meditating, what I was going to say is when you attempt to meditate, you're trying to be present and be in the moment. And when that first thought comes through, whether it's like maybe your grocery list or your to-do list, an item comes through or something on your mind pops up, you just try not to get frustrated, but actually just acknowledge and accept, okay, here you are, here's this thought, I see you, I hear you, now we're going to put it to the side. And then one of the best ways to kind of reset is to go back to your breath. And so focusing on your breathing, like focusing and paying attention on your inhalation, how the air coming in through, let's say, your nose feels the temperature, etc., the volume, and then on the exhale, how that feels, like slowly releasing the breath. And just continue cycles of that, paying attention to that inhalation and the exhalation. And when you're really focused on that, all these other random thoughts we don't even see or hear them or pay attention to them because we're focused on this.
Yeah.
And so you do that to kind of reset and then just be in the moment and let your mind drift to where it's going. But then if you have another thought come in or something off the to-do list, acknowledge it, put it aside again, reset, and come back to it. And so that exercise of doing that and practicing it, because meditation's a practice, the more you do it, the better you get at putting those thoughts aside. And what you'll notice is the amount of time in between the thoughts increase in duration. And so you're actually finding that you're actually able to be present for a longer period of time before that next thought comes through.
That's such good advice. Yeah, and I think you're right. A lot of people feel that that's their number one challenge with meditation.
And so if you give yourself a break with, if you want to start a meditation practice, don't put the pressure on yourself to like do it every day. Like if it's like with any habit that you're trying to start, if you set goals too high that are out of reach or unrealistic for your lifestyle, then you're not going to be successful. So if you want to start a meditation practice, maybe you decide that, okay, Wednesday morning, I have a half hour before I have to leave for work. And I'm not even saying do a half hour meditation, but you have that half hour amount of time that you have, it's flexible time. You could say, all right, let me try to meditate for 5 or 10 minutes. And so you can do that I would start out with a guided meditation from either YouTube or one of these phone apps like Calm or Aura or Insight Timer that's guided, so you don't have to think about how do I go about this, and you just kind of listen to the voice and be guided. And just going with a guided meditation also will be an advantage to you to hopefully ignore those distracting thoughts that might come through because you're actually paying attention and listening to the guidance.
Yep. Makes total sense. I think that's great advice.
And then if you eventually, say, okay, I want to start this practice, start on Wednesday, and let's see if you can do 2 to 4 weeks in a row with just Wednesday. And then if you do that consistently, okay, now you've developed a practice on Wednesdays. And let's say we want to add to it. So let's add another day. So maybe Fridays, we carve out some time. And the time really doesn't matter. It could be in the morning. It could be before you go to bed. It could be in the afternoon. But find a time that feels the least stressful to fit it in.
Yep. I think it's perfect.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so that's meditation. That's great advice. What else can we do for
there's different types of energy work to help kind of recalibrate things and maintain and manage our energy systems. So things like Reiki, acupuncture, reflexology, those are different modalities that work with your energy. And so these modalities are working with the chakra systems. They're working with your auric field. They're affecting the Dantian. They're affecting the meridians.
Yeah. And you can you're a Reiki master, right? So you can do Reiki on yourself as well, right? If you need it.
I can do self Reiki. And so for me, that is one of my go-tos and one of my tools that I use to manage my energy is doing like self Reiki in the mornings. So that's part of my daily routine.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take long. I can do a quick work on the 7 major chakras in 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah. Do you just pay attention to what you think your body needs the most? Is that part of it, or do you have a set routine?
It depends. Like there's a couple different scenarios. So like if I'm not pressed for time, I might work intuitively and stay over each chakra as long as I feel like I want to.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm pressed for time, then I can also approach it that I may spend, a certain number of breaths at each chakra. So I might do a cycle of 3 inhales, 3 exhales, and then move on.
Gotcha. Awesome. All right. What else you got? This is a lot. So to recap, we've had basic hygiene, right? Diet, physical exercise. We've talked a lot about meditation, energy work like Reiki and acupuncture. What else is in your arsenal?
So the other thing that we have available that people have realized over hundreds and thousands of years is sound, because it's a frequency and carries a vibration, affects our energy systems as well. So
Mm-hmm.
things like music can affect that.
Yeah.
People also utilize, going to like sound baths where practitioners might lead a group through a sound bath by playing either like Tibetan or crystal sound bowls, chimes, gongs, bells. There's drum circles that you can go to, where people might use like shamanic drums, rattles, other tools, that basically make noise, that move energy and change vibration.
My favorite sound is flute. There's something about like Native American flute,
Me
like through
too.
the
Yeah.
that literally just vibrates through my body. And I've never done a sound bath ceremony, but I have heard amazing things, and it's on my to-do list. So sound is like
And
absolutely
yeah.
such a great way to work with energy.
And if you can't actually get in person for a class or a sound bath somewhere, you can actually go on YouTube or some of these apps we were talking about earlier
Mm-hmm.
and plug in your earbuds and find like a channel that plays these different tracks that might be playing sound bowls, or they may be playing etheric music, or you can find like channels that do shamanic drumming, for example, to many different things. So you have access with like our technology. If you can't go seek out these things in person, you can still receive it through your ears by plugging in somewhere.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, what else you got? I think your last one is my favorite one.
Okay. And then the other thing that we need to pay attention to with our energy fields is we need to clear, cleanse, and then
Wait,
after we've
you didn't talk about crystals.
Oh, you're totally right. I skipped over. I don't know how I missed that.
I'm not
Rewind.
gonna let you get legit one of my favorite new obsessions. Okay, the floor is yours to talk about crystals.
Okay, so crystals, because they carry their own vibration, um, anything that carries a frequency or vibration can have an effect on our energy system, because we're all frequency and vibration. And
Mm-hmm.
so they can have an effect that calibrates us in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And so we talked about the chakras earlier. There's a lot of different crystals connected to the chakra system. And you can find charts and you can find things online. And if you go into crystal shops, people can show you around and tell you about like certain crystals that are good for this chakra or that chakra, and some that are good for grounding and some for protection and some for cleansing, etc. Um, we can also, with crystals, we can work with them We can wear them as jewelry. So we can have, someone could wear earrings, bracelets, rings. We can carry pocket stones. Some women throw small crystals in their bra. They walk around with them.
Mhm.
Um, we can also use crystals while we're meditating also. So like when we're on these meditating apps, or we're just, working in our meditation practice, depending on what we want to work on, or if there's a particular chakra that we want to focus on, we might hold one of those particular crystals that might be connected to that,
Mhm.
to sort of just encourage and strengthen the connection to that frequency and vibration.
Yeah, I have a friend who I saw this past weekend. She came over my house and she's said, like, I'm not someone who can feel anything. I think the rocks are so pretty, but like they don't have any impact on me. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, okay. And I gave her a piece of selenite, which she intuitively put on top of her head and
How
then
funny.
sat there and like about 90 seconds into 2 minutes in, I could see her pupils dilating. And like the way she looked at me was like, what is happening? And I just started laughing and I said, yeah, selenite will make you feel, it opens up the crown chakra. And for me personally, makes me feel a little dizzy and lightheaded in a beautiful way, but it's very like it opens me up a lot, and I could see her feeling something too, and on her face just processing that experience. It was crazy.
Yeah, when our upper chakras and our vibration runs really high, that's where you can get some of those symptoms of the dizziness or the euphoria feeling. That's very common. And as our vibration raises, we become less grounded. So it's important that even though we raise our vibration sometimes, that we also come back down and ground
Yes.
ourselves as well.
Yes, I talked to her about that too, and she wasn't driving that night, so I knew that we
Oh,
could
good.
like bring her back. But it was really just magical to see someone who had said for so long that they could appreciate the beauty and they were open to the concept of crystals being energetic, right? But never having had experience up until that moment was pretty awesome. Um, the other thing I want to say that around like preserving your soul that's really helpful for me is nature. So going
Mm,
outside into nature. And thankfully, where I live, there's just a lot of trails, walking paths, preserved land. So it's not even like a sidewalk, but you do what you have, right? Even if you live in a city, go
mhm.
out for a walk, find a park if you can. But getting outside um, is super helpful for me. It just clears away a lot of what I don't need. And sometimes I will just take my shoes off, not in the dead of winter, but like, and just let my bare feet stand on the dirt or the grass for a minute and just imagine sort of Mother Earth taking away what I don't need. But it's more visual than a lot of people want to do. But just go outside. It's very helpful.
Yeah. And one of the other things I want to say about that too is, let's say someone lives in an area where it's not convenient for them to get outside or connect with the outdoors, but yet they would like to, or get some sort of aspect of that, is you can actually bring plants into your house or where you live or your office, and surround yourself with those things as well.
Yeah, I've recently become a huge plant nerd, and I love it. And I'm just keep bringing them into the house because it feels so good. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, plants are a big thing. Okay, so we talked a lot about clearing energy tactics, right? Will you
Hmm.
talk a little bit about, well, we talked about kind of preserving it, but will you talk a little bit about protection, cleansing, sort of other tactics you can do in addition to some of the meditation, sleep hygiene, diet, exercise stuff that we talked about?
Yeah, so like you and I have talked about this, and I've talked about it
Mm.
with many clients, as far as like creating like an energetic bubble for yourself
Mm.
to protect yourself. And if you have an imagination, you can create this barrier or boundary, right?
Hmm.
So can you tell us a little bit, like, what does yours look like, Erin?
Ah. So I have been learning a lot lately about energetic protection, and I think I'm just in the beginning stages of my journey. And Leo has been enormously helpful with this. And it's probably fair to say I'm a somewhat sensitive person energetically, like becoming
I would say,
increasingly so. Yeah, and
yeah.
I wasn't wasn't doing a great job with protection. But what I do now, and Leo's right, imagination and visualization is really helpful. I cleanse my home energetically. I imagine this white wave of light just rolling through the house. And sometimes I call in Archangel Michael and my team to help me just clear out anything that doesn't serve me, that's not in my highest, greatest good, right? And I imagine that wave rolling out the windows and taking with it anything that doesn't serve me. I do that almost daily. I also sage pretty regularly, I'd say once a week or so, and it varies based on what's right for each person. What's right for me feels like sacred smoke for once a week, give or take, is probably a good routine, including myself. Um, and then I imagine once I've sort of cleared myself and the space, I imagine a big bubble over my home, a big protective bubble that,
Mhm.
Leo taught me, decline and deny any negative energy, entities, or attachments, right? That bubble
Mhm.
pops over my home. And then the last thing that was really important that I forgot to do for a while when I got sick that got me into trouble is adding a bubble over myself, right? So, like,
Mhm.
as my individual person, right? So, my home is sort of set up. Um, and I had to remember that I was kind of the last stop in that four-part piece, right? And so I just imagine being covered in white light head to toe. And again, I invite in my spirit guides and Archangel Michael to help me ensure that that bubble is impenetrable to anything that's not in my highest, greatest good. So I kind of, that's the routine. And then I personally like selenite. It's one of my favorites. So I have little sticks popped in the window just to kind of help reinforce that bubble. And I imagine when I put the bubble up, I imagine the selenite sticks lighting up, and it just reinforces that energetic boundary that I've declared over my home. It takes a
Nice.
lot of work.
Yeah. So I wanted to make a reference to something. Um, I think it maybe was in the last week you forwarded me a link to Kyle Gray's video.
Oh, yeah, we got to put that in the
So
show
I wanted to
notes.
talk about that real quick. So I
Yeah.
watched it and I thought it was actually a really good resource. And this video that he talked about, our bubbles and our boundaries and our shields that we create around our own personal self.
Mm-hmm.
He talked in the video about why sometimes it feels like they don't work.
Mm.
And so, what he talked about in the video, which was actually really good and it would be easy to forget about, but like actually clearing away like your own self before you trap whatever is attached or connected to you
Mm-hmm.
inside your bubble.
Yep.
So it kind of makes sense. So it's kind of like, you know, the analogy I'm getting right now is like if we think about our home and if we close our doors and we close our windows to kind of keep everything out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if we left our doors open or our windows open and we get some stuff that wanders in through the windows or the front door, could be animals or whatever, and then we forget about making sure that stuff is gone before we close the windows and shut the doors.
Mm-hmm.
Now all that stuff is still in with us.
Yep.
And I get another example of think about like, if anybody has ever had like a squirrel get in their attic,
Mm.
how much damage they do because they're trapped inside the
Yep.
house.
Yep. Such a great
So
analogy.
I thought his video was a really good, um, just an additional practice to kind of on your checklist to make sure, have I done this yet? It's kind of like, also, like if you go play in a mud puddle, right?
Hmm.
And you get all muddy and dirty and all that stuff. If you were to just, take your clothes off, but you don't go take a bath and shower, and you just take your dirty clothes off and then you throw on your clean clothes, you're putting that all on over all that other stuff that got on you.
Yep. Yeah, which is actually, it's funny because as I was talking about my sequencing, a lot of that had been refined very recently based on Kyle Gray's video, which was like clear it
Mhm.
out first, then put the protective element over it. Um,
Yeah,
and
and go ahead.
I will say, like, it sounds, I know sort of what I do sounds like a lot. It felt at the beginning like a lot because I was new to it. But now I just combine it with whatever meditation or prayers I happen to be doing. And I can probably do it all in like 15, 20 minutes, right? Tops, which is just part of my spiritual hygiene and spiritual practice anyway. So I kind of back it up because for what it's worth, all of that exercise of like clearing in the bubble raises my vibration and just helps me transition into a couple of minutes of meditation. That's personally the experience that I found, is that I just feel a little bit lighter after that. And I'm like, oh, well, I'll sit down for 5 minutes and meditate. And then any prayers or well wishes or like good karma I want to put out into the world, I sit down and think about that too. And then that's it. That's done. 20 minutes.
Erin, can you talk a little bit about briefly how using the bubble and not using the bubble has affected you, let's say, for example, at work?
um, I didn't realize that I was an empath. I never would have described myself as an empath at all. Um, but sometimes in corporate America, there's a lot of intensity and anxiety around deadlines, around budgets. There's not a lot of room to be imperfect, so that applies a lot of stress to get things done. And I was feeling that every day for a really long time. And I didn't realize that I was feeling it. I just thought that that was the normal course of going through the world. I didn't realize that you only are accountable for carrying what's yours, right? You are not accountable for carrying someone else's experience, or certain the collective experience of corporate America is not my burden alone to bear. And I was just carrying all of that with me. And then you and I had a lot of conversations around what to do. And I was remembering to put the bubble up over my home, but I was forgetting to put it up over me. And I just got walloped with feeling overwhelmed and tired and moody and anxious, and like had kind of lost objectivity with what I was doing at work. I wasn't sleeping well. A couple nightmares popped in here and there. Um, and then you were kind of going through the list with me. And at the very last thing on the list was like, well, it's great that you're doing your home, but what about you as a person? Like, presumably you leave your home at one point or
Mm-hmm.
another. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oops,
Yep.
forgot
Because I think
that.
you were doing it for a while, and then I think just things got busy, life happened, and you kind of got out
Yeah.
of habit.
And I got sick too.
Right,
Yeah.
right. That's right. And
Yeah.
that's the other thing too. You know, when we get sick or disease happens, that lowers our vibration. And
Yep.
when our vibration's lower, like our defenses are a little bit lower.
Yep.
So that's why it's important to stay healthy or do what we can to the best of our ability to stay healthy for what's in our control.
Yeah. And I think that that whole experience solidified for me that it works, that it's something that I should be doing, right? When you take it away and then you realize that it actually was serving a purpose, you sort of don't notice it when there's not a problem. But when there is a problem, all of a sudden you notice it. And then I will say, again, from personal experience, I went to Reiki, and that Reiki practitioner did a lot of work energetically on me too, which was enormously helpful. And something I'll continue doing probably monthly. So there are a lot of these energetic practices that you and I talked about where I've begun introducing them into my life and have found them to be really beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so just to kind of rewind real quick, so just to kind of recap, like specifically about your personal bubble or shield that you're creating, you basically want to make sure, as we were talking about the video, with making sure your own person yourself is clean and clear first before we put up the bubble. Then once we've done that, and so there's different ways you can do that. You can do it with smoke cleansing. You can do it with Reiki. You can use crystals like selenite. There's also like frequencies that you can listen to clear your energy vibration as well on some of these apps in YouTube that we talked about earlier too. But once that step's been done, then with your imagination, you can kind of, and if this is the first time that you're actually creating a bubble, you just kind of have to create it. And then once you create it, now you know what it is. Now you know what it looks like, because basically what we do, I do it in layers when I coach someone with it. So I have someone think about, like, is there a shape that you want to surround you? Do you want it to be like a circle, an oval, a pyramid, something like that? Does it have a color that feels protective to you? If you do any research on the archangels, or connect with your guides, you can ask them to jump in and help as reinforcements to support your boundary or your bubble. And then basically what you want to do is you want to define what your bubble is going to do for you. So you basically want to assign instructions. So we want to say this bubble that we're putting around us is, one, when we put a barrier up, we want to make sure that we put it up so that something doesn't get in. So we want to kind of define this bubble. It's not going to allow anything of, let's say, like lower vibration or energy or entity or anything to kind of breach that barrier or get through to us. And then the other thing that I like to do, in addition for it like keeping that stuff out, is what I also like to add to it. And this is something kind of as my energy protection has evolved, I kind of added this, but like each attempt for stuff to try to breach that barrier or get through or penetrate, it actually charges and strengthens your bubble or your barrier.
Yes, that's something you taught me too, that I do as well. It's something like anything that tries to break through the bubble only makes the bubble stronger. Right. You taught me that. Yeah.
Yep. And then also you can think of, I mentioned like archangels and guides, but you can also, if there is, let's say, loved ones in spirit that you feel connected to that make you feel safe, you can call them in to like be closer to you.
Yes.
The other thing that I was going to say, I lost my train of thought.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
What would you say to someone who's like, okay, I'm willing to try all this, but how do I know it's going to work?
Yes. Okay. So once we've kind of created it and once we've set it, we decide what's the on switch or how do we want to activate it. And so it could be as simple as like you call it in, and you call it into fruition, and you say basically shields up or bubbles surround me or activate. And then what I like to do is just consider it once you set it, forget it, and assume that it's good for 24 hours.
Okay.
And so it's something, a habit that you start once a day. Now, if you're feeling through your day, it just feels like maybe either stuff is getting through, or you're feeling just maybe where you are or where your mental state is, you're feeling pressure, and you feel like stuff surrounding you, and it feels like a little claustrophobic, right? Energetically. What
Mm-hmm.
you can also do is imagine, just like we did to create the bubble, imagine expanding and growing that bubble or shield or barrier and making it bigger and
Mm-hmm.
pushing it out to kind of push stuff away. And you
You
would
know
be
when
surprised how quickly that works, actually.
I love that. One other thing you taught me as well is don't be timid when you're setting these bubbles up and doing these practices. Don't be like, okay, I hope this works. Like, own it. It's your space. It's your divine
Right.
right to be protected, right? Like,
Like
you are,
stand in your power.
it is your divine right. Stand in your power and make it clear. You don't have to be apologetic. You don't have to be timid. You can set the terms and conditions, right? Like, you are in control of that.
Like if you say to someone, oh, please don't come near me,
Right,
or please don't do that, I don't like that,
right,
that may not necessarily stop that action.
right. Yeah.
So
You
you need to
don't,
be like firm and stand in your ground, and like you mean business.
yeah. It's your space. It's your energy. You have every right to protect it. Yeah. That's so helpful. The other thing I'll say is like imagination is a big part of this. So have fun with it to some extent. Like I love just imagining this thing coming up. And that's what I say to someone who's like, well, how do I know it works or not? I'm like, if you imagine it, just imagine it. It's up there. That's the biggest step, right? Just put it up. Use your imagination. Have fun with it. Like let your creativity play this out in some extent too.
And there's certain times also, from maybe when you first create one, maybe a couple years down the road, it may evolve because you may be on your spiritual path, and you may be awakening, and because of that, there's more exposure to the stuff that you need to set up boundaries for. So you may have to later on fortify or change or make this evolve.
I mean, has yours evolved over the course of your
It
life and your
has. Yeah,
practice? Yeah,
it has. Yeah.
I bet. What's like the number one thing that's changed from when you kind of began this journey to where you are now? The one thing you do differently or advanced?
I think the more we learn, the more we know, the more we realize what's out there.
Yep. So you just honor that and keep updating your practice based on that. Yeah,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Um, did you have any other questions about that?
I think the last thing I was just going to ask you about was like, what about while we're talking about bubbles and protections, what about feng shui? Like, there's some argument I think that how you organize your home and keeping it clean and not cluttered allows energy to move. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so that is something that one of the last things that I wanted to talk about briefly is, whether it's our office or where we live, etc. Basically, feng shui, it involves using our physical surroundings to direct the flow of ki or energy in a space.
Mm-hmm.
And so this can concern everything from like the color of our furniture to the actual architectural features. And, just as an example, a house with low angled ceilings, sharp corners, and a staircase that is directly pointed to the entry door are all different ways that the key can negatively affect the occupants.
Yeah.
And so, energetically, subliminally, I think they're all factors.
Yeah. One piece of advice I got a year or two ago was like, I clean my home before I do a sacred smoke. I just get it organized. I get it clean. I don't smoke out like a messy house, right? Because if everything's clean and put in its spot, that allows the smoke to get into all the places and clear out any energy that's not mine to have.
So, like, decluttering and organizing is really helpful.
Yeah. Yep. Oh my gosh, this is such a good talk. There's so much here.
And then, just real quick, too, along with the feng shui, the topic I forgot about earlier, I wanted to bring back up, but crystals.
Yeah.
Crystals can add to our decor and the feng shui and the flow of energy in our house as well. And so that's something we can tap into and enjoy as well.
I love mine. Yeah. And I put a lot of the crystals with the plants too to help because it's a symbiotic relationship. It keeps the crystals clear, but I think it also supports the plant's growth and experience too. I love it.
I just wanted to point out real quick while we're recording, but
Mm-hmm.
we're at about 1 hour and 11 minutes.
Hey, which is just about when we're going to wrap and move on to our final segment, right?
Yep. So the feed the soul segment. So
Yeah.
what I decided on about this is I was going to pull an oracle card. So I have a deck. Let's see. Can you see? Can you see?
Sort of the seven
Sort of.
energies.
Yeah. So this is a deck by Colette Baron Reed. You can find it online or her website. But let me just take a quick shuffle, and then I'm going to look in the guidebook and I will read whatever relevant card the guides want to give us tonight.
I love it.
Okay. So the card I got is Opening to Discovery. Can you read it? Sort of?
No, I can't read it. I can see the
All right.
image. I can't read the text.
We'll take a picture and we can post it later.
Absolutely.
So let me just kind of read what the guidebook says about it, and let's just see how it fits tonight. So the Opening to Discovery, the card, just to kind of describe the card a little bit, it has like a purple background. It's kind of like a night sky with stars in the sky. And it has like a very old looking key at the bottom. And then it has in the center of the card, like the shape of a keyhole, kind of looking in to like almost like another world to discover. And so let me just kind of read what this has to do with. So the key concepts with Opening to Discovery: the small bits of data you collect from the world to form ideas, the transfer of vital information via the universe always speaking to you, the need to integrate information and be discerning about what you expose yourself to. And so it says, we tune into information from our outer environment, then assign meaning to it within our psyches. Every day, however, the amount of data we sort through exceeds what we're capable of processing. Especially since the advent of the internet, we have been bombarded with more than we could ever hope to absorb. So therefore, it's important to be mindful of what we expose ourselves to. Consistent exposure to unhealthy messaging invites us into a cynical, fear-based worldview. On the other hand, Conscious exposure to information supporting our well-being shifts us toward growth and expansion. The choice, though, is not always obviously ours, which is why we must be discerning on a daily basis. The universe is always engaging us. We are part of it, after all, through synchronicity, omens, and other signs that point toward our best path. Our intuition helps us tune in and see our environment like an oracle. However, this new information doesn't always make sense right away, so being curious and non-resistant is key to learning. Today, be open to receiving important information that may come from an unusual source. The universe wants to help you, but recognizing the way this aid will arrive depends on your willingness to shut out superfluous noise. Maybe you need to take a break from your social media, gossip, or the news. Don't let yourself get distracted. Listen without attachment and see what arises in your life. Accept a message from the universe, and you shall have it.
I love it. So beautiful.
Anything in that stood out for you?
I mean,
any key words or anything that just kind of thoughts that came up as I was reading it?
I mean, I thought it was like a beautiful way to complement our conversation around energy, preserving the soul, and just choosing what you intake, right? And how that influences you. So if you're intaking, too much social media, particularly negative social media, gossip, news that makes you upset, etc., like you're going to feel and react to that. So like choose what you want to consume and then you can open up.
Because it affects our vibration.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I'm like even careful about like what I watch on TV or what I choose to read, because I really would like, if I'm going to watch TV, it better be comedy or something funny that's going to like make me lighter in how I feel. But I don't watch horror. That's just not for me anymore. It's just like, I think it's beautiful. It's a beautiful message. What'd you take away from it?
One of the things that I'm getting right now is just like, as maybe a suggestion from the guides, is like, especially with, us talking right now about like filtering what's coming through to us and what we're taking in for information, with everybody with our smartphones, something really simple that we can do that we might not think about is even just changing the notification settings on our phone of what we're being alerted to.
Makes a big difference.
Actually make a huge difference, right?
I love it.
Did you have any closing comments, Erin, or anything else you want to say for tonight?
Other than I love this conversation, I feel like what we do to help ourselves just feel better and like have a better existence is really important. And I love talking through it with you. So thank you so much for all the wisdom you wanted to share, because it's been personally very helpful for me. And I love that now anyone who listens to this episode gets blessed with that same support. So I love it. It's great.
I think it's a great way to kind of kick off the new year.
Yeah, it is. All right, Leo, I will catch you on our next episode, right?
All right. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Mystery of the Soul. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you have a question, topic suggestion, or just want to say hi, we'd love to hear from you. You can visit our website at mysteryofthesoul.com, reach us on Instagram, or email us at mysteryofthesoulpodcast@gmail.com. If you're interested in booking a session with Leo, you can contact us at Mystery of the Soul or visit Leo's website directly at leomediummccarthy.net.